If you feel closer to the person you work with than you do to the person you sleep with, you may want to figure that out. Dr. David McKenzie is a former Anglican priest and current couples counselor and sex therapist who helps people figure out the thorny issues that affect our daily lives. Every 2 weeks or so, he drops in with some advice, and today we will open the phone lines to you so you can join in too. If you had a shout-out-loud fight last night, Dr. McKenzie may be able to help you, maybe not, don't know, but it's 604-629-4444. You can write it down. It's my pleasure to welcome David McKenzie to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Thank you, Fanny. Good to be here.
Nice to see you. A shout-out-loud fight last night. You may be able to help, and you may not. It's not instant, is it?
No, it's not. And usually fights arise from two sources. One are power issues in the relationship, and others are long-standing conflicts which are never quite resolved.
Right.
I think I said before that the couples that last over 30 years have an average of 8 irreconcilable differences. So it's how you handle those conflicts.
8?
8.
It's that question again. It always comes up somewhere in that you start fighting about the cornflakes, and at the end, it's that question again.
Exactly. Yeah, they keep coming up. It's like a sore that never quite heals, and it's how a couple eventually comes to resolve that and integrate it into their relationship.
Well, in my relationships, I know what we do is say we can't go there.
Well, that's another way of handling it.
We've gone there many times. We know how I feel and we know how you feel,
That's
so we
right.
just won't go there anymore because it never works out.
Well, it's interesting. John Gottman says there are 3 types of relationships that will last the long haul. The first type are those where you have to work everything out, every feeling, every thought. The second type are those who just let you be. You know, you can have whatever thoughts and we don't have to work every conflict out. The third type that lasts the long haul tend to be those who have mad dog-eat fights and then make up and make mad passionate love.
Oh, I see. Well, you know, I figure if you could both be who you really are in the relationship, then it's going to last. If one of you has to tiptoe and pretend and fake it.
100% correct. And all the empirical research backs you up on that.
Okay, so we're supposed to talk today about the upsides and downsides of an office romance.
Okay.
More women working, of course. Blue collar, white collar, pink collar. Office romance, good idea, bad idea, or does it matter?
Well, it's interesting. Maclean's did an article in January of this year on what they called office wives. I would call them office spouses. And they say that there are many situations in which a co-worker will become your confidant. You will share with that person very deeply. What often happens in those office kind of romances or whatever, if you bring your primary partner into that and invite this woman or this man home for dinner and make them part of your unit, it really does not threaten the relationship. What happens is if you start to become secretive and you're meeting after work, having secret telephone calls, that is a primary threat to the relationship.
But you understand the intimacy between two people when you work every day together. Sure. You're on the same page, you're intellectually meeting. Yep. Maybe not sexually meeting yet, but that's a very powerful thing.
Well, George Bernard Shaw once said, platonic love is platonic nonsense. And so I believe wherever people meet, there is sexuality. Even between men, although our culture does not admit that, it represses that. But there is some sexual tension going on all the time. It's there, it's subliminal. And so if you have 2 co-workers who are spending all sorts of time, especially evening shifts with each other, and they pass their spouse during the day because he or she is working in the daytime and they just don't see each other till Saturday, that gives a lot of time to those work relationships.
Of course, and in many work relationships, men and women travel together.
Absolutely.
You're in New York City.
That's right.
The wife and the husband are at home. You have a lovely dinner, intensity, all of the stuff. If there's no sparks, there's no sparks. You think, please, go back to your room.
In those situations,
without me.
In those situations, you'll usually find men who will act out sexually more than women. Women are usually much more committed to their relationship and tend not to act out as much, even if they go away at conferences. There has to be something quite destructive going on in the relationship for a woman to act out, I find. Whereas men are wired differently, we've evolved differently, and put enough temptation in front of a man and he'll usually act out on that. Not all men. Nothing is written in steel.
Right.
But a lot of men would.
So now you have the relationship and you've had an affairette. Can we call it that? In New York City with somebody you work with, and you come back home and he says, that was New York. we're back at the office. We're in Vancouver. My wife lives here. Not going there here.
Yeah.
Or maybe he doesn't say that, but it can happen. Now your feelings are hurt because you thought it meant something in New York.
Of course. Yeah.
Some women do, you know.
Of course.
You slept
Absolutely.
with me, that must have meant something.
Well, women tend to bond much more quickly than men. And so I hate to say these men-women things because it tends to look like I'm categorizing, which I don't.
Right.
But there are tendencies in either gender. And so, yeah.
I read that the other day. Men think about sex every 8 seconds.
I believe that. That's correct.
All men, every 8 seconds. And as you say, we shouldn't generalize, but when women think about sex, maybe once a day. Maybe once a week.
Well, it's interesting you say that because in my institute where I got my PhD in San Francisco, we had various panels come and present to the PhD class. One was a transgender, in which female to male. And he sat there with his beard and a very deep voice and was talking about how he was walking down Market Street one day and came to a kiosk with erotic magazines. And before, as a woman, he would say, how can men look at these? How disgusting. They're objectifying women. And then suddenly he felt this urge, because his hormones were different, this urge, and for the first time he realized what men have to put up with. It's a lot harder for a man to avoid looking at those sexual images than it is for a woman.
I understand. The other thing I find fascinating about office romances is when you're in it, you think no one knows. And mostly everyone knows.
Of course.
It's
Well,
why do we think we're so
well, it becomes
good
obvious that you're having lunch together, you're going on walks together, you're spending a lot of time together.
Sure, and you can almost feel it, or you can see it. You say, "I think,"
Sure.
or if there are favors done, that's an area. You think, why does she still have a job here? You know, so, I know, really.
Yeah.
But I think any affair, two partners always, not always, but often think, well, no one knows.
Well, there's an
Only we know for sure.
Well, true, but there's an emotional affair, and it always begins emotionally, and then progresses from there into a sexual affair.
Right. No one knows and everyone knows. It's how you react around, even though you're sitting at the boardroom table. It's almost physical. You can see the sparks.
Yes.
It's a different, even though you think you're acting corporately.
You pick it up in the eyes.
I know.
We're very adept at that.
We are.
Yeah.
We're so good at that. You think, wow, something's going on there. Now, some people don't pay attention to that stuff at all. You do.
Yeah. Well, obviously in therapy, any counseling therapist should be attuned to people's eyes and their facial looks and so on. So if one partner is talking and the other one's rolling her eyes and staring out the window, you want to confront that and say, what's going on?
Sure. And when it goes asunder and you still have to work together, that's tough times.
You bet it is. Yeah. I've often thought of a number of people in which that has happened. And it's very difficult because those feelings are there. And especially if you have a supervisory role, which is really difficult. You can lose your job over that.
My early days of radio, one of our television hosts was having a bit of an event with one of the girls in the office. And we're on live radio. And we're having high drama in the hallway, right? So during the commercials, there's like tears and yelling and doors slamming. You think, okay, we're coming back on air. Calm down.
The late Bruce Attridge, who was a professor of fine arts at SFU, used to call it the anarchy of being in love. Everything goes out the window.
Isn't it true? Like common sense, everything.
Absolutely.
So you think, well, we're in the office, that won't happen. Doors slamming.
That's right.
What's going on? The guys in sports, they weren't paying attention to anything, but the sports scores, the rest of us are saying, oh my, this is good. And some of us are hooked on that kind of drama. It's pretty good.
Yes, well, it makes our life interesting.
Well, if it's not you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Way better
We
for
have a
somebody
voyeur
else.
instinct in us as human beings. We want to observe and look at others. So,
I know, Rashad and I watch The Young and the Restless. You see, we like the salacious bits.
Okay.
Okay. 604-629-4444, or if you're calling long distance, 1-877-904-7429. Dr. David McKenzie is here. He's a sex therapist. He's a relationship counselor. And Nancy, go ahead, from Vancouver.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Well, my boyfriend's in the film industry, and so he spends a lot of time with the crew and gets involved in these, projects, and I find I don't get to see him that much. And, it's kind of hard when he's so involved in these projects.
Especially and on a film set, as you know, 24/7 sometimes.
First of all,
movie stars.
I'm not sure I heard a question in that, but I'm certainly willing to respond to
Okay.
it. And that is that couples who find themselves in occupations that take them away from each other consciously have to carve out time to be with each other in those places where they are together. If they do not make a concerted, conscious effort to spend time with each other, they'll drift apart. It's kind of like you look at railway tracks. Good marriages are always like this. That's not a good railway track, but they're always kind of parallel. They're negotiating. If you start out here and start becoming secretive and not spending time, it doesn't take long before you're way out of touch with each other. So it's that constant building bridges, keeping in touch.
And how does he bring his world to you? If you're not interested in his world, you bring your world to him. What do you make of people who call each other a lot, couples?
That can
5
be,
times a day, 4 times a day. What is the difference, in your opinion, between callers and non-callers? When two people are together, what's that about?
Well, I mean, if you're calling your spouse 5 times a day at work, I think that's worth talking about, because that could become very interruptive. It also tends to show your relationship to the public as being rather insecure. I don't think there's anything wrong, if the boss allows it, to talking to your spouse for a few minutes on the phone every day.
Right.
Maybe if there's an emergency, 2 calls. If it's up to 5 calls a day, there's something else going on here. If you just simply never call your spouse, it could be interpreted as a sign of something going on in the relationship in which they're not communicating, or it could just be a very secure relationship in which they don't need to be doing that.
Well, that's interesting, because when 2 people meet, now we're boyfriend, girlfriend, he's a caller, you're not, you're a caller, he's not. You have to work out the phone call thing. Some men call you at night and say, I just called to tuck you in, not for any reason. Other men call you when they have something to tell you, period, never any other time. And the woman is at home thinking, well, why hasn't he called?
And you know what? The biggest thing you need to do is communicate about that. Be vulnerable and say, I really enjoy having a phone call from you every day. Well, I don't have a need to call you every day, but let's work something out. Maybe every other day. It's called negotiation. It's like a business contract.
I suppose. And if they call you every other day, and then after a while you realize they have nothing to say if you make them call. So give them some leeway.
Oh, I think we can always find something to say.
Probably.
I always tell couples, remember, you don't get what you think you deserve. You get what you negotiate. It's just like in a business contract.
But they tell me, men will always say, I'll call you. When they leave you, I'll call you. And they don't. What's that about? A way to say goodbye?
No, you mean after they've had a one-night stand? Or
yeah, or after they've had dinner with you, or maybe it's a first date.
If somebody's interested in you...
I'll call you. And they don't. And the girl thinks, he'll call me.
She will take it more seriously.
What does it mean?
I think it often can mean a kiss-off. I think it can be that he's simply not interested. If somebody wants to be with you, they will call you. I tell couples, if they say, well, we didn't do our homework, you know, well, how are you going to solve your sexual problems if you don't do the assignments? If you were told you needed a chemotherapy treatment next Thursday or you'd die in a week, would you get it? Oh, absolutely. Well, it's the priorities you make.
For sure. You can be brave and give us a call at 604-629-4444. You don't necessarily have to be on the topic of office romance or boyfriend, girlfriend, but anything to do with your relationship, your personal relationship. And when we come back, I'd like to talk about same-sex unions.
Sure.
Okay. After this. Dr. David McKenzie is visiting Studio 4. He is a couples counselor and sex therapist. I'll get it right. Not supposed to say that. A sex therapist made me nervous, don't you know? If your relationship is not so perfect or asunder, he can help you out. And the lines are open at 604-629-4444 or 1-877 if you're in the Okanagan, 904-7429 or on the island. Okay, same-sex unions. Are there any differences when 2 men get together, 2 women get together, or male and female get together, when they come to you as a couple? Are there unique problems, really?
There are always unique problems in every relationship. Gay, lesbian relationships have their own particular set of issues. Basically, the dynamics are the same. It's communication, how they relate, respecting each other's boundaries. The basis of all good relationships are firm boundaries, and so I teach all couples that. The sexual drive for men is different than it is for women, And so oftentimes you'll find amongst gays and lesbians, especially more amongst gays, tendencies to feel more jealousy. There are also within the gay community perhaps more men tend to look a lot. And so that can spur lots of jealousies.
Well, my gay men friends, I have the most fun with in the whole world.
Sure.
I just wish they sat on my windowsill. I do. Because I think, if I was married to you, we would so get each other. You know? Yes. Sure you're not willing to change your sexual persuasion? No? Okay, fine. And I hang with I have some wonderful gay couple friends who've been coupled for a long time, and we have the most fun. Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out a way I can move in. Now, what's that about?
Because I believe that gay men tend to be much more in touch with their feminine side. Not all gay men,
right,
but they tend to be very much in touch with the feminine side of them. And so women can relate to somebody who's willing to share emotions, be vulnerable, yet be strong.
And they're so much fun.
They are a lot of fun, very creative.
Fun.
Yeah.
Not that you don't with Macho Mike. I'm not saying that, but there's something about it. And when it starts to roll, it really rolls. It's great. Jeannie from Richmond, hello.
Hi. I was just wondering the, I guess, healthy side of talking about the other person and how talking about that other person, what are the benefits of it? I guess the fact is that my partner needs to talk about the other person.
In his life?
How she has affected our relationship.
I would like to say that I think it is a gift that your husband is willing to talk to you about this person. When a husband or a wife starts to shut down and not communicate about what's going on in the office or this other relationship, that's where you have to be very concerned. So communication, openness. If there's something going on in which he is bragging about her in a way that you feel put down, I think you need to communicate that with him. Possibly he's not intending that. And if there are other issues that raises in the relationship, perhaps you should be looking at professional counseling.
Do you think they're having an affair, Jeannie? Is that what you're talking about, the other person, or is he just working with her in the office and thinks she's fabulous?
Just to correct you, it's me with another woman.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
It's very well. Obviously, it's complicated, but we are communicating, a lot. But I guess where we are right now is we are. She wants to talk about her. And I want to be able to talk about this other person, but I also want it to be the right things to talk about. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure what you mean by the right things.
This did not go to, a full-blown affair in that sense of the word. It was more time sharing, I guess you could say, and we were, very, very fast friends, which in the end very could have been a threat to our relationship. And I never really realized it, that this person could have been a threat. I never really realized it.
Sometimes when we have feelings for other people, it's important with our partners to vent that and express it in a supportive relationship. If you find that all she can talk about are her good points and how she would like to be with her, that is something that you need, I think, to get some help with, or certainly communicate with each other about what's missing in the primary relationship. I think it's really important if your partner or you have feelings for another that be vented and talked about in the primary relationship. That's how we resolve issues. That's how we integrate it. We cannot go through life without having some feelings at some time or another for someone else. Doesn't mean our relationship ends or that the commitment ends, but we need to be able to talk about that in a trusting, supportive environment.
Mm-hmm. But like Jeannie said, you get a sense if your partner starts to talk about somebody a lot. Mm-hmm. It's threatening in a way. Mm-hmm. It's yes, thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. you know, but you think something's up there.
But that's
if your radar is honed, you think something's up there.
There could well be, and it's a basis for communication. What's going on that we seldom talk about us, but we're always talking about this other person? That needs to be communicated. There's something else going on.
How
here.
fabulous they are, how wonderful they
sure,
are.
That could be pretty
Well, you know why? Because if you are having well, I'm not the therapist, but if you are having an affair with somebody and you're not with them and you're back with your spouse, it's fun to talk about the other person.
Well,
do you see what I mean?
Well, I do, but there must be a tremendous amount of trust in this relationship for her to be able to share that with you. And so I think it's important to emphasize the positive points of this and to say, what have we got going? Why are you talking about this person so much? Can you see how that's impacting me? And that kind of open, vulnerable sharing with each other. If it becomes something in which she becomes secretive and doesn't share that with you, that's much more worrying.
Sure. Yeah, because we all have friends of the opposite sex or the same sex, depending on what kind of relationship we're in, that we're very close to, that we're never going to sleep with.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's the whole issue around flirting, for instance. In flirting, it is a way of being able, that's different from sexual teasing. Flirting is a way of being able to push your boundaries, to touch the other person's erotic self and your own. But in that flirting, there's a very definite message given that there are boundaries and I'm not going any further. In sexual teasing, there's always that subliminal or conscious message, if you just play your cards right, you can get me in bed. And that could be very dangerous.
Right. And who opens that door generally? Is it the woman or the man in a heterosexual relationship?
You mean if the woman is giving sexual
who lets
teasing?
down the guard? I took a relationship class once and they said, well, the woman runs the show. If she gives the indication, the man will go. But it's really her.
I agree with that.
Who has the power in that regard? Really?
I agree with that, yes. And I think in a lot of relationships, certainly sexual, women have most of the power. Because one of the great concerns that comes to a sex therapist is lack of sexual desire on the part of women. One study suggested almost 50% of all women complain of low or no sexual desire. A Finnish study 2 years ago. Certainly around 20 to 30% complain of this.
Right.
So if you're with a partner who only doesn't want to have sex that often and you're just biting at the bit to have it, who's got the power in that relationship?
Well, late at night we have these discussions. Can men and women just be friends? And when it really gets juicy, you say, oh no, if a man just is your friend, what he really wants to do is...
I don't agree with that.
No, I don't agree with that either. I have tons of men friends who could care less.
I counsel couples.
Think.
Well, you don't know, do you?
No.
I counsel couples in which they've been friends for several years, then they decide to get married. In some of those, not all of them, in some of those situations, they've never initiated sex with each other. And they have to overcome that feeling of living with their brother or their sister.
I'm sure. See, I've never understood those. I know they happen.
Yeah.
But you've been friends for 5 years, and one day you say, I'm in love with this person. You didn't ever have the ziz, and one day you both decide we're madly in love. That is so amazing to me, how that happens. I know that it feels like, I have men who feel like my brothers.
Yes, yeah. You'll find more often in those kinds of relationships that they tend to make decisions to marry on the basis of, well, you know, the flower of the cake here is a good friendship. That's what makes good marriages, so let's just get together and have babies.
You and me, baby.
Yeah.
Okay. Helen from Kelowna, hello. Ooh. Helen's got a high voice. Let's try, we might be having some trouble with the Kelowna line. Let's try Karen from Vancouver.
Hi, this is Corinne.
Corinne? Hi.
Hi. And it's a pseudonym anyhow.
I'm sorry? I missed it.
Sorry, we missed you.
It's a pseudonym anyhow.
Oh, I see.
Oh, fine.
The question
That's
that
good.
I
You
have
can be,
is with regards to my sexual drive within my relationship with my husband. So even though you have a finished study, I'm one of those people. And I don't understand it because in previous relationships, I was very interested, active, engaged, and I'm not. And I think it has to do with something about my opinion and my feelings about my body and how it looks, and that I'm not, you know, like those other girls who are gorgeous and blah, blah, blah. But it has an impact on our relationship, and my husband is fabulous. I mean, he's a wonderful guy, the man of my dreams. I love him to bits, and he loves me to bits no matter what. So it's not his opinion of me, it's my opinion of me. And when we do make love, it's awesome. I just think there's room for improvement on my part, and I'd like your feedback on what I could look at that might make a difference for me.
In relationships, sex never stands alone. It's always connected to something else. It's connected to things within us personally, and you've just alluded to that. It's also connected to things within the relationship. Now, you've mentioned you have a terrific relationship, so I'm going to assume that there are not deep residing anger issues that you have towards your husband. It doesn't appear to be the case. But if you're talking about body image, women's sexuality is very much linked to the feelings they have about their bodies, their genitals. So if they feel that they're fat, they're ugly, there's something wrong with them, their breasts are too small, or
they're
old, whatever, that's going to affect their feelings of sexuality. For any person to feel sexual, they have to feel good about themselves. I would suggest something to you. I would suggest that with your husband, you stand in front of a mirror, take the phone off the hook, make sure the kids are in bed or whatever, time to yourself. Each of you stand in front of the mirror separately. Your spouse sits down and observes without saying a thing, and you begin by taking your clothes off and describing every aspect of your body, right down to the toes in your feet, stark naked. That has a very healing effect, and it helps you to sometimes fall in love with your body again. Your spouse is to come over and give you a big hug and say, "I love you the way you are," and then he does the same thing, or you can reverse that. It has a way of cutting right to the chase in terms of looking at your body and feeling good about that. That's one of the techniques I use. I would think you might also look at some professional counseling for yourself in terms of getting help around body issues. I think you said that in a previous relationship, if I didn't misunderstand that, you had a fairly good sex life. But in this relationship, there seems to be a hesitancy or a lack of desire. At different times in our lives, at different contexts, different things happen. A study last September, a year ago last September, came out in the United Kingdom that showed that women with one child under 5 have sex approximately 50% fewer times. 2 children under 5, spouses are basically not having sex. She's utterly exhausted. It depends on stress levels. It depends on various events, unresolved griefs in your life. There are a lot of factors that enter into that.
So I just have a cat, so I guess a cat equals 2 children.
That's fine.
That's it. The cat's exhausting you. Don't you know?
Thank you, Dave.
But that's a really interesting event, isn't it?
What is that?
So you take all your clothes off in front of your mate.
Yeah. Actually, in one of my courses for my PhD, Virginia Satir practiced this in her classes. At one of my courses, we were invited to stand in front of a class of 30 and do that exercise. And I didn't realize how much I actually love my body until I started.
No, you mean 30 people looking?
That's right, yes. And there's one who's a very well-known sex educator today in North America. And she'd always had body image problems. And she could only get down to her bra and panties, but she started to weep when she got to her hips, because that was always a big issue with her.
Well, all our lives we've looked at these scrawny little models, really, as being the ideal woman. I said in the my daughter said in the jean store the other day, we were trying on the tight jeans, and she said to the clerk, "Well, we have thighs." And the clerk said, "Well, that's great, thighs are in." Yes. And my daughter said, "Yeah, in Portugal." So, you know, it can be tough.
Okay.
Anne, hello.
Oh, hi there.
Hi there.
Love the show, Fanny.
Thank you.
My thing is I've had rheumatoid for a number of years, and I've scars, you know, from surgeries. Anyway, I'm 55, and I'd love to meet a partner. I am attractive and that, but it really hurts. Like, I went for a massage, and it hurts to have someone touch me. My body's in pain. So I was just wondering, listening to the conversation you were having there, I guess does it have to be based on sex? Like, am I not going to have a relationship because it's hard to have a physical relationship?
Not all relationships have to be sexual. There are many very successful relationships. As well, I think that you can engage in very light touch with each other, and you need, again, to communicate how that feels. In Sensate Focus, I have couples who are not connected with each other lie naked in bed and just do very light touch with each other and give feedback as to how that feels. You can also have sexual contact and relations without coitus, without intercourse. And so I teach couples that hand stimulation, oral stimulation, simply lying with each other and spooning each other can be a very erotic experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just being close to somebody, you're
Absolutely,
right.
yeah.
And I mean, if a man has a prostate operation and can't get full sexual function back, there's many people who are experiencing that.
That's right.
A woman who's had a complete mastectomy feels weird about her body, can get over it, or can say, not going there, but I'll have a brain relationship with you.
Yes.
And I think the mental relationships are phenomenal.
They are. Oftentimes women are more in tune with that than men are because we're wired differently. With a woman who's had a mastectomy, or somebody who's lost a limb, there is a grieving involved in that.
Yes.
And so there are exercises I give to a woman who's lost a breast or both breasts to cancer. And so she must come to the time of grieving and then integrating that into herself.
Well, Stedman Graham says, you are not your circumstances, you are your possibilities. I like that.
Yes.
Stedman's coming to town, by the way. You
Oh,
didn't
good.
know. So next time you come on with me, can we talk about commitment?
Sure, absolutely.
Because I'm not sure Stedman's ever going to marry Oprah or Oprah's ever going to marry Stedman, but we don't know for sure.
Okay.
Okay, that would be
Yes.
fun. Why people commit and how they commit and when they don't commit, what does that mean? And
Sure.
when they commit quickly or they don't commit at all or they say they're committed and they're not.
A lot of commitment has to do with intimacy issues and fears, oftentimes past traumatic relationships in which somebody's been very wounded, they become jaded, and so they become gun shy.
Okay, so love is letting go of fear.
Yes.
We know this.
Yes.
I thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, listen to this first before you go. Don't hop up.
Okay.
Because we have 2 books and some pairs of tickets to give away for an event on Friday, next Friday. That's October 20th. The event in the book is You Can Make It Happen, and it's featuring Stedman Graham. I've interviewed Stedman. He's quite an interesting man. He really is. He's a great man. If you are the lucky winner, you must be available to pick up these tickets before the event at this tower, the Shaw Tower. If you'd like to win a pair of tickets and a book, you have to tell us the name of someone who you think is successful and why you think they are. And include Stedman in the subject line when you email us at studio4@shaw.ca. Or you can leave your answer and your contact details on the contest line, which is 604-629-4300. And the deadline is noon, Tuesday, October 17th. And I guess you can't win. I'm sorry, I can't win. But it's a great idea. Who do you think is successful and why? We can talk about that later.
Sure.
And you win a copy of the book and a couple of tickets. You can make it happen. I thank you.
Thank you, Fanny.
Nice to see you. And coming up, a peek at Chocolat, a new magazine with high design ideas and advice to help you fix up your home office, indulge your pretentious pooch, or throw a stylish cocktail party in your not so trendy digs.